Good evening. The late-night silence inside Buckingham Palace felt unnatural, too still, too tense. The kind of silence that only arrived before disaster. Rain tapped softly against the palace windows as staff moved quickly through dimly lit corridors, carrying folders, sealed envelopes, and whispered concerns from office to office. Because tonight, one message had shaken the monarchy to its core. Meghan Markle was reportedly willing to discuss a royal return. But there was a catch. Actually, 3 of them. And according to palace insiders, each condition was being described as completely non-negotiable. Inside a private sitting room, King Charles III sat near the fireplace holding a briefing document he had already read 3 times. Yet somehow each reading made the situation worse. Across from him stood a visibly nervous senior aide. "Are we certain this came directly from her team?" The aide nodded carefully. "Yes, Your Majesty." Charles slowly removed his glasses. "And Prince Harry?" The hesitation before the answer said everything. "He appears supportive of the proposal." Charles leaned back heavily. Outside the room, thunder rolled across London. Inside, the monarchy was beginning to panic because the Sussexes were no longer asking for reconciliation. They were demanding terms. Thousands of miles away in Montecito, California, Meghan stood on a balcony overlooking the ocean as waves crashed beneath the moonlight. Calm on the outside. But inside, emotions churned violently. Prince Harry stepped outside quietly behind her. "You sent it." Meghan didn't turn immediately. "Yes." Harry exhaled slowly. "Do you think they'll agree?" Meghan finally looked back at him. "That depends." "On what?" Her expression sharpened slightly. "Whether they want peace or surrender." Harry frowned faintly. "That sounds like a war." Meghan gave a small, humorless smile. Maybe it always was. The tension between them lingered. Because despite the headlines, documentaries, interviews, and years of public conflict, neither Harry nor Meghan had truly escaped the emotional gravity of the royal family. And deep down, they both knew it. Harry walked closer. "You know my father won't react well to demands." Meghan crossed her arms lightly against the cool night air. "They weren't demands." Harry raised an eyebrow. "Meg," she turned fully toward him now, "I'm not walking back into that institution powerless." Her voice wasn't angry. It was resolved, and Harry recognized that tone immediately. Once Meghan reached that emotional point, there was no changing her mind. "What if they refuse?" he asked quietly. Meghan looked back toward the ocean. "Then nothing changes." But something in her eyes suggested otherwise, because beneath the confidence, there was fear. Not fear of rejection, fear of returning to the same emotional prison she believed nearly destroyed her the first time. Back in London, the royal briefing had already spread through inner palace circles like wildfire. Inside Kensington Palace, Prince William stood beside a large window while aides nervously updated him. "They're calling them conditions," one aide explained carefully. William's jaw tightened. "Conditions for what exactly?" "A structured royal return." William laughed once, coldly. "After everything?" The aide remained silent, because nobody wanted to answer that question honestly. "Not tonight." William turned sharply. "And my father is considering this?" Another pause. "That appears to be the concern." William's expression darkened immediately, because to him this wasn't merely about family reconciliation anymore. It was about stability, control, public trust, and the future of the monarchy itself. "What are the conditions?" he finally asked. The aide swallowed nervously. "The first is reportedly full restoration of security protection during any UK residency." William said nothing. "The second is an official public acknowledgement that the Sussexes were unfairly treated by palace media operations." Now his eyes narrowed. "And the third?" The aide hesitated longer this time. "A guaranteed independent role within the monarchy, free from direct oversight by senior royal staff." The room fell silent. William stared in disbelief. "They want autonomy." "Yes, sir." William's voice turned dangerously quiet. They already had that. But privately, something deeper bothered him, because these conditions weren't emotional. They were strategic, carefully designed, and that made them far more threatening. At Buckingham Palace, Charles remained awake well past midnight. The briefing papers still sat untouched beside him now. Instead, his attention drifted toward an old framed photograph resting on the desk nearby. Harry as a child, laughing. Before interviews, before accusations, before division consumed the family. Charles closed his eyes briefly. Then Camilla entered quietly. Queen Camilla studied his expression carefully. You haven't moved in nearly an hour. Charles sighed. You've heard. Camilla nodded once. And? Charles looked exhausted. I don't know what to do. Camilla slowly approached the desk. You know exactly what this is. Charles looked up. A negotiation? No, Camilla said bluntly. A test. Her words lingered heavily in the room. Charles rubbed his forehead tiredly. They're still family. Camilla's expression softened slightly. Yes, but they're also unpredictable. Charles didn't argue, because deep down, he feared she might be right. Camilla sat beside him carefully. What concerns you most? Charles stared toward the rain outside. The second condition. Camilla immediately understood why. Public acknowledgement, an admission, not private healing, not reconciliation behind palace walls. A public declaration that the institution itself had failed Harry and Meghan. And Charles knew exactly what that could trigger. Media chaos, political pressure, renewed attacks on palace officials, fresh division inside the royal family, potential long-term damage to the crown itself. Camilla's voice lowered. If you give them that, there's no taking it back. Charles nodded faintly. I know. But another thought haunted him. If he refused, would he lose Harry forever? Meanwhile, in California, Meghan sat alone inside her home office reviewing media reports already beginning to leak online. Palace panic, Sussex ultimatum, royal return demands. She closed the laptop immediately. The headlines irritated her, because from her perspective, none of this was about power. It was about protection, about avoiding the mistakes of the past. Harry entered quietly holding tea. You shouldn't read those articles. Meghan accepted the cup slowly. They're acting like I'm trying to stage a takeover. Harry gave a tired smile. That's because half the palace believes you are. Meghan laughed bitterly. That's exactly the problem. Harry sat beside her. They're afraid. Of me? Harry hesitated. Of what changes if they admit they handled things badly? Meghan looked down silently, then whispered, I never wanted war with them. Harry studied her carefully. But she looked up again. I'm done apologizing for surviving. The emotion in her voice stunned even him. Because beneath the public image, Meghan still carried scars from those royal years. The isolation, the media pressure, the feeling of being trapped inside a machine she could never fully control. Harry took her hand gently. If this becomes too painful again? Meghan shook her head immediately. No, this time I decide the terms. The next morning, the situation exploded publicly. News outlets across Britain and America began reporting rumors of 3 non-negotiable Sussex conditions. Palace switchboards lit up nonstop. Royal commentators flooded television panels. Social media erupted into civil war. Some defended Meghan fiercely. Others accused her of arrogance. Inside Buckingham Palace, aides scrambled desperately to contain the growing chaos. But the worst moment came shortly after noon, because William requested an emergency private meeting with Charles, and it did not go well. You cannot seriously entertain this, William snapped the moment the doors closed. Charles remained seated. I'm considering all options. William paced furiously. They attacked this family publicly for years. Charles's tone remained calm. They are still family. William stopped walking. And what about the institution? Charles looked directly at him. What about it? William's frustration exploded. You think giving in to these conditions makes this go away? It won't. It tells the world pressure works. Charles stood slowly now. This isn't about surrender. William laughed sharply. That's exactly what it looks like. The room fell silent. Then William said the one thing Charles feared hearing most. If you agree to this, you risk splitting the family permanently. Charles' face tightened. You think refusing won't do the same? Neither man answered, because both possibilities felt true. That evening, Meghan received an unexpected call. Unknown UK number. She hesitated before answering. Hello? Silence for one brief second. Then, this situation is becoming dangerous. Meghan immediately recognized the voice. A senior palace official. One she hadn't spoken to in years. What do you mean dangerous? The official lowered their voice. There are people inside the institution who believe your conditions are an attempt to destabilize the monarchy. Meghan's expression hardened. That's ridiculous. Perhaps, but perception matters here. She walked toward the window slowly. And what's the palace perception of me these days? Another silence. Then quietly, a threat. That word hit harder than she expected. Because despite everything, part of Meghan had still hoped reconciliation remained possible. But hearing herself described that way by palace insiders confirmed her deepest fear. They never truly saw her as family, only risk. The official spoke again carefully. You need to understand something. What? There are senior figures terrified of what happens if the public believes you were right all along. The call ended minutes later, but Meghan remained standing motionless afterward, because suddenly the entire situation felt much larger than emotional family conflict. This was about narrative, legacy, history itself, and Buckingham Palace was fighting to protect all three. Late that night, Harry found Meghan sitting alone again. You okay? She looked emotionally exhausted. They think I'm dangerous. Harry frowned. Who said that? She shook her head. Doesn't matter. Harry sat beside her quietly. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Meghan finally whispered, maybe they never wanted me there in the first place. Harry immediately answered, that's not true. But even he sounded uncertain, because deep down, he remembered the tension too, the whispers, the headlines, the constant sense that Meghan was being evaluated instead of embraced. Harry rubbed his face tiredly. I hate that it's come to this. Meghan looked at him carefully. Then why does part of you still want to go back? That question hit him hard, because it was true. Despite everything, part of Harry still missed home. Not the institution, not the politics, but the connection, the history, his father, his brother, the life that once felt simple before everything shattered. Harry looked away. I don't know, but Meghan did know. And that uncertainty terrified her more than any palace negotiation ever could. Because if Harry's heart still belonged partly to the monarchy, then someday she feared it might pull him away from her too. At Buckingham Palace, Charles received one final update before midnight. Public reaction is becoming increasingly divided, Your Majesty. Charles nodded faintly. And William? He remains strongly opposed. Charles expected that. What about Harry? The aide hesitated. Reports suggest he's trying to mediate privately. Charles closed his eyes briefly. That sounded exactly like his younger son. Still caught between two worlds. Still trying to fix what might already be broken beyond repair. The aide carefully placed another document onto the desk. What's this? A draft response to the Sussex conditions. Charles stared at it silently, then slowly asked, and if I reject them? The aide answered honestly, then reconciliation may become impossible. Charles looked toward the dark palace windows, alone, tired. A king carrying not just a crown, but a fractured family. And somewhere across the ocean, Meghan Markle sat awake too, waiting, watching, and refusing to return to royal life unless the monarchy finally accepted her terms. Because this time, she wasn't walking back into the palace as the woman they once controlled. This time, she intended to walk in with power. Thank you for watching. Write what you think about it. Subscribe to the channel.